The night was bone-chillingly cold, the kind that seeped into your bones and clung to you like an unwelcome second skin. I had been driving home after a long day at work when my car sputtered, coughed, and died on a narrow, snowbound road. With no cell signal and nothing but darkness stretching endlessly on either side, I cursed my luck and scanned the horizon for any signs of civilization. That's when I saw it. A faint glimmer of light in the distance. Curiosity and desperation drove me toward it, my boots crunching over frozen gravel. The light led me to an old train station, isolated and forlorn, like something plucked from another era. A rusty sign above the platform read, St. Elmo's Station. The lettering was faded, but the name sent an odd shiver through me. I didn't remember seeing it on the map. The station was eerily quiet, save for the occasional howl of the wind. A flickering lantern hung from a pole, casting long, distorted shadows over the platform. The benches were dusted with snow, and a broken clock above the ticket booth had stopped at midnight. I told myself it was just an ordinary forgotten station, but the stillness carried a weight, like the air itself was holding its breath. And then, as if on cue, a train's whistle echoed through the night. At first, I thought I was imagining it, but the sound grew louder, accompanied by the distant clatter of wheels against tracks. I squinted through the swirling snow and saw it. A train, gleaming like a phantom, rolling toward the platform. It was impossibly elegant, its brass fixtures catching the light of the flickering lantern. Warm, golden light spilled from its windows, but something about it felt wrong. The train came to a smooth halt, and the door slid open with a soft, almost welcoming hiss. I peered inside. Passengers filled the plush seats, their faces turned toward the frosted windows. They were dressed in clothes from another time, long coats, lace gloves, and wide-brimmed hats. But it wasn't their attire that froze me in place. It was their faces. Their eyes were hollow, empty pools of darkness, and their skin was a deathly pale, like porcelain left out in the cold. Yet none of them acknowledged me. I don't know why, but I stepped forward onto the platform. My breath fogged in the air, and I hesitated, wondering if I should turn back. The conductor emerged then, tall and thin, with a crisp uniform and a smile too wide to be natural. He tipped his hat to me and extended a gloved hand. "Your ticket, sir," he said, his voice smooth and low. I don't have a ticket," I stammered. "No matter," he replied, pressing something into my palm. "You do now." I glanced down. The ticket bore my name in bold letters, and below it, the destination. Home. But the fine print was in a language I couldn't read. "Where is this train going?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Why, where you're meant to be," he said, smiling wider. Before I could protest, his gloved hand ushered me aboard. The door hissed shut behind me. The train's interior was breathtaking, like stepping into a bygone era of opulence. The walls were paneled with dark wood, polished to a mirror-like sheen. Garlands of holly and pine hung above the windows, and candles flickered in ornate holders. The seats were upholstered in velvet, and the air carried a faint scent of evergreen mixed with something older, something metallic and sour. I took a seat near the back, hoping to gather my thoughts, but my unease only deepened. Outside the windows, the snowstorm raged, yet the scenery didn't change. It was as if the train wasn't moving at all, though I could feel the vibrations beneath my feet and hear the rhythmic clatter of wheels on tracks. The other passengers didn't seem to notice. They sat in silence, staring blankly into the distance. I tried to catch the eye of a woman across the aisle, but her gaze was unfocused, as though she were looking through me. A child a few rows ahead clutched a stuffed bear, her head tilted at an unnatural angle. She didn't blink. Then, without warning, the lights dimmed, plunging the car into semi-darkness. A low hum filled the air, vibrating deep in my chest. I turned to look out the window and saw something strange. The snow had stopped falling, replaced by an impenetrable black void. For a moment I thought I saw shapes moving within it, shadowy figures gliding just beyond the glass. I gripped the edge of my seat, my heart pounding. This wasn't right. None of this was right. The conductor appeared suddenly, his footsteps eerily soundless. He handed me a cup of something steaming. "Warm yourself," he said. "It's a long journey ahead." I didn't take it. "Where are we going?" I demanded, my voice sharper than I intended. His smile never wavered. "All questions will be answered in due time," he said. "Enjoy the ride." He disappeared as quickly as he had come, leaving me with a cup of liquid that smelled faintly of ash. I set it aside, unease bubbling inside me. I glanced down at the ticket he had given me earlier, running my fingers over the embossed letters. They seemed to shift under my touch, the unreadable text twisting into strange, spidery shapes. The air grew colder and I noticed something else. One by one, the passengers were disappearing. At first, I thought I was imagining it. But when I turned to look at the woman across the aisle, her seat was empty. So was the child's. I stood, my legs trembling. "Hello?" I called, my voice echoing down the silent car. "Is anyone there?" The train gave a sudden jolt, throwing me back into my seat. The windows rattled and the golden light flickered again, this time revealing fleeting glimpses of something horrific. Twisted faces, skeletal hands clawing at the glass, and a landscape filled with endless wreckage. I tried to move, but I couldn't. It was as if the train itself was holding me in place, forcing me to bear witness. Somewhere ahead, the conductor began to hum a low, haunting tune. The train plunged into darkness, the flickering golden lights replaced by an unearthly glow that seemed to pulse from the walls. My pulse thundered in my ears, and I forced myself to stand. I couldn't stay in that seat, not with whatever malevolence was creeping closer. I moved through the car, gripping the seats for balance as the train swayed violently. The other passengers, or what was left of them, were still seated, their hollow eyes now fixed on me. A man in a tattered suit slowly turned his head as I passed, his neck creaking like old wood. His lips parted, but no sound came out. The next car was different. The festive decorations were gone, replaced by bare metal walls streaked with rust. The air was damp and reeked of decay. The hum of the train's engine grew louder, almost deafening as I pressed forward. My breath came in ragged gasps, each step heavier than the last. I stumbled into a dining car and froze. The table settings were immaculate, silver cutlery gleaming under flickering chandeliers. Plates were piled high with rotting food, turkey legs crawling with maggots, candied fruits dripping with mold. At the center of the table was the conductor, his skeletal smile wide and fixed. He was carving into a roast, its flesh unnervingly human-like. "Do you like our feast?" he asked, his voice echoing unnaturally. "A celebration for those who never made it home." I backed away, my legs trembling. "What is this place?" I demanded. "It's our place," he replied, gesturing around him. "The train carries the forgotten, the lost, the ones who linger in the cold." He leaned forward, his shadow stretching impossibly long. "And now, you are one of us." I turned and ran, my heart pounding as his laughter followed me down the corridor. The walls of the train seemed to close in, the once luxurious cars now rusting, decayed and warped. Windows shattered inward as I passed, letting in a freezing wind that carried faint whispers. The whispers grew louder as I reached the final car. The door was heavy, its surface etched with strange, shifting symbols. As I pushed it open, an overwhelming wave of cold swept over me, and I stumbled into a swirling fog. Inside, the space was vast and endless, a stark contrast to the narrow confines of the train. Ghostly figures drifted aimlessly, their faces blurred and indistinct. A low moan rose from the mist, carrying a single word: escape. But how? A faint light glimmered ahead, barely visible through the fog. I began to move toward it, my every step weighed down by an invisible force. The moans grew louder, pleading now, as if warning me to turn back. But I couldn't stop. I wouldn't become part of this train's twisted history. The light led me to a towering door, its surface carved with depictions of the train's history: wreckage, fire, and screaming faces frozen in agony. My name was etched near the bottom, fresh and sharp. The sight chilled me to the core. Behind me, the fog began to shift, taking form. The conductor emerged, his gaunt figure looming taller and darker than before. His hollow eyes burned with a spectral light, and his smile stretched impossibly wide, splitting his face like a wound. "You can't leave," he said, his voice echoing like thunder. "This is your home now. Your fate is sealed." "No!" I shouted, my voice trembling. "I don't belong here!" The conductor raised a bony hand, and the fog surged toward me like a living thing, icy tendrils coiling around my limbs. My mind screamed with the knowledge that if I gave in, I would be trapped forever. Then I remembered the girl, the spectral child I had seen earlier. Her whispered warning echoed in my mind. "The caboose. It's your only way out." Summoning every ounce of strength, I broke free from the fog's grip and sprinted toward the rear of the car. The train trembled violently, its walls groaning as if resisting my escape. The conductor's laughter boomed behind me, and I felt his presence closing in. Finally, I reached the caboose. The door was ajar, revealing the swirling void outside. The wind howled, threatening to pull me into its depths, but I didn't hesitate. The conductor appeared in the doorway, his form now monstrous. His skeletal frame twisted and elongated, his grin impossibly wide. "You can't escape," he hissed, his voice a chorus of wailing souls. Without a second thought, I jumped. The void swallowed me whole, and for a moment I felt nothing but cold and weightlessness. The train's whistle echoed faintly, growing fainter until it disappeared entirely. I hit the ground hard, the impact jarring me awake. Snow swirled around me, and the old station loomed in the distance. The train was gone, as if it had never existed. I staggered to my feet, every part of me aching. As I stumbled toward the road, a distant whistle pierced the air. Turning back, I saw the faint outline of the train, barely visible through the storm. The conductor stood at the rear, his skeletal hand raised in a mock salute. I turned and kept walking, the whistle fading into the night. But I knew I hadn't truly escaped. Not completely. The ticket was still in my pocket, its destination blank, waiting. The snow fell harder as I stumbled away from the station, my mind racing. Each breath fogged the air, my pulse drumming in my ears like a warning. The whistle of the train had vanished, but the memory of it lingered, faint and oppressive. My fingers trembled as I reached into my pocket. The ticket was still there. The gold lettering shimmered faintly against the black paper, mocking me. My name was clear, but the destination, the word home, was gone. In its place, the letters had twisted into the same unreadable script I'd seen before. The fine print shifted, alive, as if daring me to decipher its secrets. I threw the ticket into the snow. The wind carried it away almost immediately, yet I felt no relief. I could still feel it in my pocket, its weight impossibly heavy. I kept walking, following the road until I saw the glow of headlights cutting through the storm. Relief surged through me as a car slowed to a stop, the driver rolling down the window. "Need a ride?" the man asked, his voice kind but cautious. "Yes," I managed, my voice shaking. "Thank you." I climbed into the passenger seat, the warmth of the heater washing over me. The man glanced at me with concern. "Rough night?" "You could say that," I muttered. I didn't elaborate. How could I explain what had just happened? As the car rolled down the snowy road, I glanced back toward the station. It was gone. There was no sign of the platform, no flickering lantern, no lingering shadows. Just an empty stretch of whiteness. I told myself it was over. I had escaped. But the driver's radio crackled to life, interrupting the silence. A soft, old-fashioned melody floated through the speakers, piano keys tinged with an eerie, mournful quality. The sound was faint, but familiar. The man frowned, tapping the radio. "That's strange. I don't even have the station tuned in." I stared at the radio, my heart sinking as the melody swelled. It was the same haunting tune I had heard on the train, and it brought back every horrifying detail. The conductor's skeletal grin, the vacant eyes of the passengers, the cold weight of inevitability. "Can you turn it off?" I asked, my voice cracking. He nodded, twisting the dial. The music stopped, but I couldn't shake the unease curling around me like a second skin. When I finally got home, the house was dark and still, my family asleep upstairs. The warmth of the familiar walls should have comforted me, but it didn't. I locked the door behind me, bolting it for good measure, and collapsed onto the couch. I didn't notice the ticket until I sat up. It was on the coffee table, pristine and black, the gold letters shimmering faintly in the dim light. My breath caught. I had thrown it away. The fine print was clearer now, the strange, shifting script forming a single word. Return. A faint whistle sounded in the distance, barely audible but unmistakable. My heart sank as I realized the truth. The train wasn't done with me. It never would be. And somewhere in the stillness of the night, I swore I heard the conductor's voice, low and full of promise. "All aboard."